It should be going to full screen. There it goes. Okay, Heather, the floor is yours as soon as you see your slides.
Okay, great. Well, I think everybody but maybe Sarah was here when I did the 9/11 presentation. Is
No,
that
I think she might have come in a little bit late, but I think she was here.
Okay, so you all did meet me prior then, I assume. Okay, except for Greg, you weren't on that, I don't think, that session. But thank you for having me back. Gosh, it was 2 weeks ago tonight that we had the conversation about 9/11, and I remember saying to all of you, this is kind of strange coming to talk about 9/11 when we're facing this next scenario, and when you think about how much our world has changed in just those 2 weeks. And I kind of feel the same way. I'm like, you really want to hear about my career journey when there's so many other major things like what Mac's talking about his world every day. So I'm humbled to be here and share, and I'm glad to walk you through my story. It just seems a little bit tiny in the universe right now, but I'm
Can you see your slides?
Not yet, but there's a build. So
okay. Oh, all right. So there we go. Okay.
So I'm sorry, Audrey, there's a build again because I'm used to driving myself. So,
okay. Just tell me when.
I'll just tell you when to click. But anyway, so like I said, I feel like it's a little tiny piece of the universe right now, but I'll go through it and be glad to share my life lessons and try to just focus on that story and be as helpful as I can for the context of this today. I would be curious if you have any specific questions for me, because the reason why I've done this before for university students is really to just share my journey of how I went from one role to the other, what I did with learning and experiences. And so I'm just going to do that, but I'd be happy if you want to chat or raise your hand and come off mute and interject to make this as interactive and as helpful for you all rather than me just talking at you. So. And I think I can see the chat next to your things, but Audrey, can you see it too?
I see the four of you on Bayshore.
No, the chat. Can you see the chat room if anyone were to chat questions?
Oh, no, I can't at this point because I went full screen.
Oh.
I can go back to not full screen.
Okay. Yeah, I just would prefer, since we're a small group, to make this interactive. So
I think it looks like what we have to do is have them just put on their microphones to talk if they have a question. And so just know that it's okay to stop her at any time to ask a question.
Okay. All right, great. Well, as you saw a couple weeks ago, this is a picture of my family. It's an older one that I showed last time. The kids are a little bit younger, and we're still in school and still at home and had braces. So, and that's one of the things I always say is my whole world starts with this core group. So I put them at the center of my story as I'm talking about my journey and focus and life lessons. If you do one click, Audrey, I will show you where it all began. I grew up in a very small town in northern Michigan called Manton, Michigan. Population is less, like about 1,000. When I left, there was 1,007, and we always all joked about who was number 7. So real tiny, still is a small town. I graduated with 49 kids. I went to school in a K through 12 school. So we had the same building, kindergarten through 12th. It was kind of like a U shape. So elementary was on one side, middle school, and then on a long lamp, the high school. And we all ate lunch together with the elementary and the middle school. So really, really small beginnings. This picture was taken on a recent trip back to Michigan, behind our property. I saw these hay bales and just got my brother to hoist me up there to take the picture because I felt like it was just such a great shot of my humble roots. And I am so happy and grateful that I grew up in that kind of an environment. And I'm thankful to Facebook today because I'm still friends and connected with so many people that are there. And we have our all little groups and pages. And most people really haven't left there. I think there were maybe 6 of us who went to college, and 4 who went to the military, and the remainder of my friends stayed there and went into, trades and those kinds of jobs. So I was grateful that I did go to college. I ended up, that's part of my next story. It's pretty funny now looking back, how it all turned out. But I grew up in a very musical family, and we entertained people. My father was a professional drummer. My brother ended up becoming a professional drummer as well. My mom was a classically trained pianist, and we had this little contemporary group that sang and did shows, kind of like the Partridge Family. And then that evolved for me into joining a traveling performing arts group. And so I had my eyes set on Broadway. I was going to go dance on Broadway and sing and do all musical theater things. And just knew that I was going to go to Michigan State to get a degree in musical theater and then head for New York. In middle school and high school, I started getting involved in politics and other kinds of things. I was very involved in student council, student government, and I started wondering if I really wanted to be a dancer, or maybe I'd want to do something different. And as fate would have it, I injured my knee, and I couldn't be a dancer the rest of my life. I was told I could do it for fun, but not for an occupation if I wanted to keep walking. And so I ended up switching my application at Michigan State to a business degree, and not knowing any better, didn't think that would be a big deal. And as you can imagine, I didn't get accepted. And it's the only school I applied to. And I just learned the statement now is it's called suiciding when you only apply to one school. And I had no idea. I just thought I was going to Michigan State and that's where I would end up. So it was pretty devastating when I didn't get in. And now going through that with my 2 daughters of applying to school, it's kind of been interesting to relive it. So I ended up going as a fallback to a school called Ferris State University. There's a picture of me outside of it next. And interestingly enough, my grandmother, my father, my mother, and my brother all went to Ferris. And it's a wonderful university in Big Rapids, Michigan, has about 15,000 students now. My grandmother and mother went to it when it was an institution, so Ferris State Institute. My brother graduated from it when it was Ferris State College, and I graduated from it when it was Ferris State University. So my family has helped the school grow. They let every kid in, no matter what your grades or your test scores are, and they still do today. The only thing is you have to maintain a certain grade average from the first quarter on, and thankfully I was able to do that. So I ended up getting my business degree there, and it was a really great, again, experience where I think I ended up right where I was supposed to be. So after school, I was still kind of clueless. I knew I wanted to be in business, but I really didn't have any idea what I wanted to do. I had studied advertising at Ferris. Originally, I was going to go into TV production. And there was a whole thing there where we had to get a minor in audiovisual production first. And my classes consisted of soldering wire cables together and taking projectors apart and putting them back together and kind of the mechanics of it all. And I didn't do very well with that because I'm not a very mechanical person. So I switched to the marketing advertising group. And I really did take a liking to the sales programs. We did a lot of cases and things like that. So I thought, well, that might be interesting to learn to do some sort of client work. So I took advantage of the college campus recruiting and ended up interviewing with a number of different companies based in Michigan. And the company I chose to go to work for and who chose me was EDS, which no longer exists. They were an IT integrator kind of company well before there were IT integrator kind of companies. And for those who've been around a while, you may recognize it when I say Ross Perot was the founder and CEO. So he was a very popular leader. He actually had a run at the presidential race and came very close in the 90s. So he gained much more popularity there. But he sold the company to General Motors right when I joined. And so if you click Audrey, my very first job out of college actually is what launched my career because I ended up going into customer service. And EDS was hiring right out of college all of these recent grads to staff their call centers. And EDS had the contract to run all of the 1-800 customer service call centers for all of the General Motors car lines at the time. So I was hired to go to work for Pontiac Motor Division, which also doesn't exist anymore. But I headed up, or I took customer service calls at that call center. And it was really cool because it was, all of us were recent college grads. So I called it orientation to work life. We had a great community, and we really learned how to, show up for an 8-to-5 job, and it was still a very fun environment. And I love to share this story when I'm talking to leaders and anybody that's, looking at how you advance your career, because I was given a wonderful opportunity 6 weeks, or I can never remember if it was 6 weeks or 6 months. It was probably 6 months into the job. I mean, literally I would sit there all day long and log in, with the headset, just like you think of in call centers. And we had to take 40 calls a day. That was our quota. And what they were was irate customers, basically, who had just had a major problem with either their brand new car, that they were devastated that something major had gone wrong, like the engine failed or it caught on fire, which was what was happening to Pontiac in the day with their Fieros, or that they had an old car that was now facing major repair needs and it was out of warranty. So we got to field calls like that all day long. And in 6 months in, at the team that did our orientation and onboarding pulled us in and asked us how the job was going and how well they had done at preparing us to do the job. And I gave feedback that I thought they had done an amazing job with the training, and they taught us everything about the technical skills, how to answer the phone, what the policies were, where our leeway was, how to contact dealerships and make a case for the customer and all of that. But they didn't teach us how to deal with an angry customer who was feeling victimized. And I said, I think it would have been wonderful if you would have given us some skills for how to deal with that, because that's the hardest part of this job, is as soon as you answer that phone, you're dealing with someone who's irate, sometimes even crying or screaming at you. And we had no skills. We had no preparation to deal with that. And they said, well, that's really good. That's good. That's a great suggestion. Why don't you develop a little small course on that, and we'll put it into the orientation program. And so I'm always grateful for that response, because they could have just said, oh yeah, Heather, who do you think you are to tell us about our program and what we need to fix? And they didn't. They were very open to my feedback and my suggestion, and they empowered me to be involved in the solution and not just complain about it. So, and what that did for me is it catapulted my career, because I ended up going into corporate training from there. I designed that course, and then EDS transferred me to Cleveland, Ohio, to manage a call center at NASA's Lewis Research Center, which is now John Glenn Research Center. And I was the team leader of our IT help desk, and ended up developing a program around customer service for all of our NASA technology centers. So it included NASA employees and my EDS colleagues in Cleveland. So literally, had that not all happened, I don't think I'd be where I am today, because I've since spent my entire career in the learning and development and human capital space, and got my start with customer service. So what happened from there is I ended up going to work for a company called Achieve Global. If you go to the next slide, or next click, at the time, their company was called Cassette International. It stood for Ken and Shannon's Extraordinary Training. And what happened is I had contracted with them to come in and do that program for NASA. I had done an RFP. I looked at a bunch of companies that did customer service training, and Cassette was the only one at the time that's all they did. That was their focus, was helping organizations build customer loyalty through making sure your employees had amazing customer service skills, which were also amazing, basically interpersonal skills that were life skills for all of us. That's where I met Audrey in 1994 when she joined. The company ended up getting merging and then getting bought and sold several times. But I spent 20 years in that company in a variety of positions. Another kind of interesting path on the journey that, again, I think is relevant when you're thinking about your career, is I thought I would join Cassette as a trainer or a consultant, because that's what I was doing, was delivering training and leading these programs. So I thought, well, I'll just go work with their clients and get to do that from their perspective. And Cassette had different things in mind for me. They wanted to hire me as a salesperson. And I was like, I've never sold before. I don't know about sales. And they said, well, you've been selling us internally at NASA for 2 years. And one of the hardest things for our salespeople is to understand how an organization would implement a program like this. And we see some natural sales skills in you. So why don't you give it a whirl? So I took a big leap. My husband and I moved from Cleveland, Ohio to Tampa, Florida. I was given a sales territory and a quota and didn't have a clue what I was doing. Thankfully it worked out for me. Okay. After going through a week of training, I was one of my colleagues who I actually just talked to today, walked into my office and said, hey, I'm here to help you, by the way. I don't know if you know, I'm your assistant. And I've never had an assistant. I was like, wow, I have an assistant? And she's like, yeah. And I said, well, how do we go about this? And she goes, well, your goal is to get these. And she held up these pink sheets. And she goes, when you get an order, you'll get a pink sheet in your mailbox. And that means you got a sale and you've got revenue, and that gets you to your quota. So your goal is to get pink sheets. Which I just laugh at today, because literally the orders came in on paper. And what we set out to do, it was Karen Loeffler, Audrey. What we set out to do was we had these books of companies, and my territory was the state government, all of the state governments in the Midwest to the Southeast, who first I had to convince they had customers, and then I had to convince them they needed to do something about their customers. But Karen and I were very successful that first year. I made my number, got to go on a sales trip to St. Thomas. And the next year I was given a larger territory selling to financial organizations, and an even better assistant, who was actually the person who would then do cold calls for me. I didn't have to do cold calling anymore. And the piece of the story I love the best about this, that I actually just told my daughter last week, or about a month ago, because my daughter didn't get into University of Florida and was heartbroken. And I shared my story about not getting into Michigan State. When I got that promotion and got the person who would do the cold calling for me, she was a Michigan State graduate. So I kind of was tickled that my first sales assistant was a Spartan. So anyway, that worked out for me. I stayed in sales for 5 years and knew that I wanted to continue to advance, and I really had a desire to go into leadership. I have a huge need to be in charge. And I also really like developing people. And so I am one of those unique anomalies where if anybody's done sales yet, or you're in HR, you know, they say that it's really hard to take a really good salesperson and have them become a sales leader, because usually the skills aren't the same. Successful salespeople are really about their own individual success. And I really didn't, I wanted to have a team and develop and lead people and run my own thing. And so I was given the opportunity after 5 years to become a sales leader. I started out with a business development team that ran cold calls and all of that for the group. I ended up taking over learning for Achieve Global. So I ran our internal training for our staff, and then ended up being able to take over our professional staff as well. All of our trainers and consultants, who I had wanted to be one of, I ended up getting to lead that organization for 5 years. So I'm very grateful. I had an amazing stay there, and did a lot of different things, including running Achieve Global's federal government division, and then building and running inside sales for them for several years. So it was a really great run. And in 2012, we were up for sale again. And I was approaching my 20th anniversary with them, and very happy and making all kinds of money. But felt like, man, if I don't go do something else soon, I probably will just end up staying here for the rest. And I just didn't want to do that. I thought I really need to go have another adventure and try something else, even though I was really, really scared. Because they were it was like a comfortable sweatshirt. I knew that company in and out, and I'd been through probably 4 or 5 sales at the time. But it was right about that time, fate fate intervened again, and I got a phone call while I was in actually I got a text from a friend while I was in line at a Wendy's drive-through. She was saying, hey, the head of sales position is open up at Burson. Would you want to do it? And she's sending me all this info, and I'm trying to catch up to it. And I was like, wow, that looks really interesting. And unfortunately, at Achieve, because I had grown up there and they had known me since I was 25 years old, that was the job that was always going to elude me. They would never see me as running the sales organization. They would give me different things, but I was never going to get to run the whole thing. So Audrey, if you click twice, I think you'll see Burson and then Deloitte come up. So I joined Burson, and every time I tell this story, I remember this theme too, because you remember I joined EDS when they were bought by GM. I joined Cassette, they became Achieve Global, and I joined Burson right when they were acquired by Deloitte. So there must be something about my career trajectory that leads to sales and acquisitions and things too. But I was very fortunate to join Burson in 2013, and I think you remember I referenced Josh Burson in my speech a couple weeks ago. They're a phenomenal company that does all sorts of research for the human capital space. And Deloitte is the leading provider of human capital services. So I joined them in 2013. I had a great 5-year run, 5.5, almost 6-year run. And I got to come in and take over the existing sales force and grew it into a global sales force, created 3 different channels. We built a small mid-sized market channel like I done at Achieve Global. I grew the enterprise sales business, and I also grew out a global footprint in Asia, India, and Europe. So it was fabulous. I traveled the world, like you saw in some of my other pictures from the last time, and it was a really great run. So the last time I gave this speech was at St. Pete Community College, and it stopped there. And then I just went on about some of my life lessons, and I opened it up to questions. Well, there's more to the story. After I did all that at Burson, and as part of Deloitte, I ran into some real burnout. So if you go to the next slide, I found this image that just kind of describes it. Approaching last May, and it started a little earlier, I began to have some significant health problems. I started having a regular occurrence of optical migraines. I started having a kidney function issue, and I had an abnormal mammogram. And all these things kind of converged at one time. And the kidney issue really created some concern and a round of testing. And what I found is while all that was going on, I was losing drive. I was really losing my momentum. I was having a hard time focusing at work every day. And life at Deloitte was getting harder and harder and harder. And Deloitte is a very driven, ambitious company, and it's expected that you grow your business, 20% year over year, and that you grow your career 20%. You find new things to do. And I felt I was getting caught up in this cycle that I really didn't feel was the best thing for me. So after a lot of soul searching and a lot of time at doctors and figuring this all out, I decided that it was time for me to step away, and had a nice little chat with my husband. And I said, I'd like to take a break and get my health in order. And I'll leave Deloitte in a good place with the team and everything, but I want to take 3 months off. So I approached my leadership at Deloitte, and they were entirely open to it. It was actually somewhat of a mutual agreement, because they knew that I was having a tough time and the numbers weren't where we needed them to be. So I actually was able to write myself out of the story. Our numbers had hit such a bad place, we were looking at potentially cutting back. And I said, if I leave, I can, you can take care of me, take me off, and I'm probably not necessary. And they said, you just did us a favor, because you were probably looking at getting fired down the road anyway. So that was tough to take, but it's all part of the story. And I feel like, again, fate jumped in and helped me out. So I managed to negotiate a severance. I stayed for 2 more months, which was pretty difficult, but it was the end of their fiscal year. And so what I had to do was see it out and prepare the company for the next fiscal year. So I had to do everybody's comp plans because salespeople have annual comp plans. I had to do all the performance reviews, and then I had to make all the recommendations for the next year's structure and goals and initiatives. So I put 2 more months in without anybody knowing I was leaving. Had to run our global sales meeting in Washington, D.C., and run that meeting without anybody knowing. So it was pretty tough, but the beauty of it was when I walked away from that, we were able to make the announcement that I was leaving, and that dragged on a little bit, another 6 weeks, and finally I'm like, guys, I gotta go. So I walked away in July, or excuse me, the beginning of August, and I was going to take 3 months off. 3 months led to 6 glorious months. I ended up in October, I decided I should just enjoy the holidays. So that's what I did. And I'll tell you in a minute where
I think I hear Adam. Adam, are you there? Oh, did anyone else?
Doing that, does anybody have any questions so far?
So I do.
Great. Thank
Good.
you.
Yeah. So talking about how you said you negotiated your severance. So
Uh-huh.
I always feel I have a hard time selling myself. You
Right.
know, if I'm going for like, you know, I'm being promoted, or, you know, I just recently got a promotion, but when I get in the room, I just kind of take whatever they give me, and I don't want to do that. I want to
Yep.
be able to sell myself. So what would be your advice?
Oh, that's a great question. And I had
Hold on a second, Heather.
Sorry.
Adam, are you there? Hi. Adam, I can hear you. Are you there?
I thought I heard him say hello.
Yeah, I thought so too.
I did as well.
But I haven't gotten an admit message. Oh, Adam, you're in Collaborate. We're in Zoom. Can you, there was a message with the Zoom link.
Want me to text him, Audrey?
Yeah, thanks. Because I couldn't figure out why I was hearing it. That's what's happened. He's over there in Connect. So if you could tell him to get into Zoom. Okay. Sorry, Heather, go ahead.
That's all right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and take Sarah's question. And I think it's mainly about how do you position yourself when you're in a negotiation like that. First of all, get good friends. I had 2 friends, one of them being Audrey and another a mutual friend of ours who helped me write my script. And then I also was in touch with our HR people at Deloitte immediately and let them know what was on my mind. And they knew all the things going on. So they were also very helpful of how to position this, because in negotiation, the key to negotiation is structuring a win-win. So you want to think of what is in it for the person you're negotiating with and what's in it for you, right? And you walk away with both winning. So I positioned it, first of all, I established credibility for myself. And it was really hard to do this because I don't like to toot my own horn, but again, through the encouragement of Audrey and Kathy, they gave me helped me with my script of, here is what I've done in the last 6 years. And I had grown, the company had grown exponentially. There were a lot of key wins, and I wrote up like a 30-second overview of, let's just do a recap of accomplishments since I've been in this position. And then I outlined the current state. And Burson really was at a major point. It was at a major point of conjunction where sales were no longer growing because of their strategy that they had put in place, and the strategy wasn't making sense. And so I positioned it that they really needed to shift the strategy, and with the shift in strategy, they didn't need someone like me. And so I said, I think it would be a perfect time for a graceful exit, is the way I positioned it. And I said, and I'd like to be given a graceful exit. If I stay on and do all these things, again, what's in it for them, I'll stay on, but then let me go and give me a cushion. And as the guy that I was talking to said, absolutely. He said, you're asking for a soft landing. And I said, yeah. And that's the way it played out. But I did them a favor. They didn't have to deal with what they were probably going to have to deal with of letting me go, because that is exactly where it was headed. And two, I was saving them money in the long run. So I was saving them work, hardship, paperwork, and money. And it was an easy decision, I think, for them. So, but really getting clear on that, and my thing, whenever I'm going to negotiate with anybody, or even when I'm going to sell somebody, I have to believe it first. So I had to get my head around my ask and make sure that I knew what I was asking for, I was worthy of. Does that answer your question, Sarah? Okay.
Her lips said yes, thank you.
I can read lips a little bit.
Did you reach Adam, Mac?
I texted him. He did not respond as of yet.
Okay, and I went over, let me see if I can.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute, guys.
Oh, that's okay.
It's okay. We read your lips. Oops. Oh, come on.
Oh, you're recording, so he can
Yes,
hear it. Okay.
I am recording.
Thank you. So can we go ahead?
Yes, I'm going to call back up your slides.
All right. So the next part of my message that you guys are the first to hear this, and I think there's something in here to share with people, is what I did with my time and how I got to the next piece of my career and where I am now. So I was pretty, as you can imagine, I think you're kind of hearing, fate takes hold, but I'm also pretty diligent about thinking about my plans and what I do next. I'm very much a plan A, plan B person. So I developed a plan for my break. And if you go to the next slide, Audrey, I had goals for my time off, and then I had goals for my new role that I actually developed during my time off. So the first thing for my time off is I called them the 3 C's. And the first thing I wanted to do was cleanse. I needed to cleanse my soul and regroup and re-energize. And I wanted to use the time to cleanse my house. We've been in our home for several years, and I'm like, I'm going to start, cleaning out closets and cleaning out the drawers and the files, because I had gone right to work from Achieve to Burson with a week off. And when I left, I realized it was literally 30 years to the date that I had taken my first job, and I had never not been unemployed. So like everything had just kind of piled on. Life and every life event was a big pile that I had carried around with me. So I wanted to cleanse that. I also wanted to crystallize my financial situation, because life was going so fast, and I had a nice career and made a nice 401k, which that's a little different today. But I wanted to get an idea of where did we stand and how much longer would I have to work before I could actually retire. A lot of people did joke about, was I retiring? No, now I'm going to be 53 in 2 weeks. But clearly I need to and plan to work for a little bit longer. But I really wanted to take some time and get with my husband and clean up stuff so that we understood what we really did need to do. So that would help me think about what my next career move was too. Because one of the things I realized is I didn't want to have to be at the same level I had been as I was with Deloitte. The pressure and the stress in that job was beyond the scope and scale that I wanted to ever have to do again. So I wanted to scale back, and I wanted to make sure I knew how much money I needed to do that, and then what the job would be. So really think about that. So I was really lucky. You'll see pictures to the right. I spent a lot of time with family and friends, and I traveled, and I went on several trips. As you can imagine, I've accrued quite a few miles, so I was able to do a few really cool trips on miles and spend time with my family. That's my mom and my daughters in the top picture, and I spent a ton of time with my mom, which was wonderful. And then good friends. And that right picture is a picture of one of my cupboards that used to drive me nuts, and it's perfectly clean, and I reorganized it, and every night still when I cook a dinner and I go into that cupboard, I'm really happy. So I did a lot of that. I also learned that I didn't have any hobbies. I always had thought I'd go back and dance. Audrey and I once were in a flash dance troupe for a while, and I loved it. But I decided I needed to have a hobby with my hands that I could do as I got older, and I'm not crafty or anything. So the picture on the left is my hobby I developed. I have started painting rocks, and I've joined a group called Tampa Bay Rocks, and we paint rocks and we hide them around Tampa Bay. My husband gets a kick out of it, but it's really therapeutic, and I love doing it. So anyway, and that little bunny rock I planted today in someone's yard who had their yard all decorated for Easter with eggs and stuff. So anyway, little fun things. So I really enjoyed it, and I got healthy again. By the way, my kidney issue got solved, and everything else that was going on, amazing, no more migraines. So life got good again, and I got clarity then on what was I going to go do. And like I said, I was going to start interviewing in October, and things were going okay financially. So I talked my husband into another 3 months. I said, I'll start interviewing, but I'd really like to not go back to work until the kids go back to school in January. And it turned out that I actually even pushed that to the 1st of February. But when I really thought about my role and what I wanted to do, these were the 4 things I came up with. And if I could give this advice to anyone, I honestly think that should be your guiding point when you're thinking about work, if you have the ability to do that, because life is so short and we do spend so much of our time at work. And by all means, it would be wonderful if you connected to what it was. So the first one for me was being passionate about the offering. I have to admit that when I joined Burson, I loved what I was doing in my role in terms of global travel and growing the organization, but I wasn't really crazy about what we did. It didn't make me get all excited when I would talk to people about it, like I did the training that we did at Achieve Global. I absolutely loved what we did and what I did there for those 20 years. So I thought, I've got to find a company again where what they do is exciting to me, and that I would want to spend happy hours and dinners with family telling them all about it. So that was number 1. Number 2 was that I had to work with a team and have a team that I knew I could trust. One of the things about being the head of sales is, especially if you're in a tough culture, you're the one in the hot seat. So when sales is down, everybody points their fingers at sales, and it can become very much an us versus them. And I felt very much like I was in that seat by myself. So I knew that whatever role I went into in the next company, I was going to have to feel really good about the leadership team there and my colleagues. And I would spend a lot of time making sure I had a comfort zone with them. Because that wasn't the case. I jumped into Burson a little too fast before thinking about that. And the good news is my first group was great, but we had changes immediately. And there weren't enough people that I felt had staying power. So I needed to look for that next time. And then third, one of the things I got to do at Deloitte a lot that I absolutely loved was to do public speaking. And I did a lot of that. So I wanted to continue and find a company where I could share thought leadership and have that stage, if you will, to be able to still do that. And then finally, the financial goal obviously had to align with what I needed to make. Interestingly enough, I set a low bar, and I said, if I can make X, then, and all those other 3 things align, then I'll do it. And Tracy, this is kind of funny, because when the job that I wanted came about, they gave me X, like it was the lowest point. And I thought, oh man, I said that I would do that, but I think I'm going to try and negotiate a little higher. So I did. So another negotiation, and I got back to where I kind of a mid spot. But I did take a pay cut. But again, it was for the gain of all those other things and at the scale of the company that I wanted to be with. So I'll tell you about where I am now and how it's going, does anybody have any questions about this?
I was going to ask you, before you revealed how old you were, I'm 56, and I'm at that point where I've retired twice, and now I'm looking at, I realistically, to get my youngest out of college, I've got to work to at least 65.
Right.
So I've got 10 more years somewhere, and I'm contemplating making that move after we finish this degree. So yeah, I was just, but
Good
you kind
for
of
you.
answered that question when you finish the rest of the story. So
Yeah, no, good for you.
It's never too late to move again.
Yeah, it never is. And I'm so glad you asked the question, Matt, because, and it sounds like you can relate because I'm in the same boat. We have a daughter who wants to go to law school. So we want to get both kids through college and we would like to contribute some, but obviously we also want her to incur some debt so she has skin in the game.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
that's where we were at too, and why I had to get so clear on what the financial outlook looked like. But I had so many people say to me while I was on this break that they could never do it. And I mean, I know I'm really lucky that I got a little bit of a cushion from Deloitte. I didn't have 6 months of severance in any way, shape, or form, but I got enough to give me the courage to do it. And then what we found out quickly is our lifestyle changed. We spent less money. Things that were important before weren't important. And it's interesting when your priorities shift, how you can get by. So it was a risk, and others said they couldn't do it because they would be afraid they would never find another job. And now again, when I did this, the labor market was very different. So, I had some courage that I'd be able to find something. And again, I think most people that have had a solid career still could, even when the market gets tough. Good people are really hard to find still to this day. So, and I think life is too short to not love what you do. So good for you for pursuing that a couple times and having that clarity too.
I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up.
I didn't either, but again, this break helped, like, to think about maybe it's not what I want to be, but what kinds of things are important to me that I do.
That is very true, because I have found that I've actually, with each move, I've made less money, but I've also lowered my stress level with each move.
That's exactly it.
And that's
a lot.
My current job is they're almost forcing me to take a promotion. They want me in leadership, and at this stage of my life, I don't want the stress.
Right.
Because I see what they're going through, and to me, it's not worth it.
Yep, I totally agree, and that's at the point that I was at as well.
A ton of money, I might consider it, but they're not offering a ton of money for the position, so
yeah,
it makes it easier to turn it down. But I just don't. And
Mac, do you have a pension from the military?
I have a pension from the military. I have a pension from the state of Wisconsin, and I'll get another pension from the federal government plus my 401k. And my wife is 8 years younger, and she's a nurse, so that's pretty much my retirement plan: collect pensions in younger women. So we'll see how that works out. But
sounds like so far so good.
Yeah, and if I move now, I could probably draw another small pension from somewhere else. So that's, I don't want to leave the federal government, but the bureaucracy is just killing me. It's horrible.
Right.
And it's not the job. It's not even the people, because there are gratifying things with dealing with veterans every day.
Sure.
But it's just all the bureaucracy. I feel like my sole existence is to keep the people that above me employed, and that's just not a good feeling.
Yeah, Deloitte felt a little like that too.
Yeah.
So in February, I went to work for a new company. And if you go to the next slide, this is just a snap screenshot of our, it's kind of funny, of our website. And this was really exciting. I found a company based in Tampa, headquartered here in my own backyard, 2 miles away. I'd never heard of them. Thankfully, they found me through a friend of a friend. And they're in the human capital space, and it's called the Omnia Group. And we provide assessments primarily that are used for hiring and team development. And then we have a whole host of services wrapped around that for building teams and developing culture and employee engagement. So right in my sweet spot. Absolutely love the offering. Love talking to my family and friends about it at happy hour. I take a lot of people through the assessments themselves just to see it. We have a career maze assessment, and then we have a lot of benchmarks for typical jobs like sales leaders, customer service, operations, all kinds of jobs you can think of. We've got benchmarks for and assess against. So it's a great little company, and I took the job to head up sales again. But I also have marketing and customer service, which is cool. I've never had marketing before, so I'm learning a whole new thing there. And we badly need some marketing. So I hired a marketing manager who started just last week. So I giggled when I said this is a screenshot of our website, because literally it's the only branding we have is our website. I couldn't even get a snapshot of a logo or anything else to put in this deck. So I've got my work cut out for me here. But the team is great. And despite this pandemic, things are going really well so far. I'm a little nervous, obviously, about joining such a small company in this day and age. But we're financially sound and probably going to be taking advantage of the legislation that's just passed last week for small businesses. So we've managed to keep everyone on staff so far and have no intention of cutting. So, and I had another call this morning with our CEO and CFO to discuss it, and we're in really good shape. So it feels good. And I've got a great team, and it's where I'm going to hopefully ride out the rest of my career is my goal. So the next slide is just some of my experience, life lessons. I start with family at the core. And I guess the only other thing I would share is, to me, I spoke to a younger class about this that I think is important when people are just starting out, is to balance it. You can't get work-life balance every single day. That's impossible. But I do believe work-life balance can be achieved over time. And if you can take your family into your career with you and find the experiences wherever you can. And I mean, the biggest gift I've been given is the ability to travel. And I've taken my kids with me when I can. And another thing, I heard a lot is, oh, I travel, but I don't ever see anything outside of the hotel. And I'm like, well, that's your fault. So, because you can always at least go find a cool place to go eat lunch or dinner. That's a new experience. And in best case scenario, you take an extra day. A lot of companies now have some very nice benefit vacation deals that come that come. So you have time off, take it and do that. So on a lot of my trips, even when my kids were young, I would bring my mom and my daughter, and that's how I'd use my miles for them to come along with me. And I've done that through their whole lives, and I've been able to take them all over the world with me. So, so that's just one of the other things I would share is don't think work has to be work and personal has to be personal. There is a way to blend them. And my gosh, if there's nothing that this pandemic is showing is that we can do that, because think of all the people now doing conference calls with their pets and their families in the background as if it's all natural. So anyway, that's my story. I think I've gone on long enough about me. Any other questions or comments?
So Mac, you going to look to do something else?
I'm really torn. I have options. I've gotten into that comfort zone. I've worked, law enforcement so long now that what I really was thinking about doing is taking one of those school guardian jobs, take another pay cut, and just I wouldn't have any law enforcement responsibility. I would just go to an elementary school and keep the kids safe. That would be my job. And I think it would be very gratifying. But then again, I've also, believe it or not, I've always thought about teaching. And when I first got out of the military, 15 years ago, I was going to do the Troops to Teachers program and do that. So that's back there. And then I've always wanted to go to do something with culinary arts.
Oh,
so it's awful late in the game for that, but you never know.
I started my doctorate at 55.
Yeah.
And you probably never knew him because I think he'd left University of Phoenix before this. There's a guy named John Newman who used to teach in the criminal justice program at University of Phoenix in Tampa. John, at the time, was the #2 police officer in Tampa. And John is now head of security for the Hillsborough County Schools.
Oh my gosh. It's a great connection.
So there are people out, and I think Judge Holder is still a good friend with him. So, you use your connections to find out what else could be out there for you.
Yeah, I mean, coming in when I first started the program to get a degree, honestly, I was just doing it because I needed to use my GI Bill money, and I just didn't want to let that go to waste, and that was my goal. And it was my whole philosophy was going to be C's get degrees, and I'm just going to do the bare minimum and get the GI Bill money and get my degree, and then next thing you know, I'm into it and I'm doing better than I ever thought I ever planned on. And now I'm actually looking at, okay, how do I make this work for me? I'm glad because initially I was going to get a criminal justice degree that I didn't need, and because I don't need it for my current position. But
Right.
But I'm
That's
glad
cool.
I took at least enough initiative to get something totally. I mean, management is never going to hurt me no matter what. Even if I stay in the organization I'm with, I can still work my way into a desk job in police administration. So I'm glad I did that and not just take the really easy route. I'll
So
figure it out. But the
never
thing about
know.
it is I'm not unhappy to the point where I'm not miserable. I could stay what I'm doing for the next 10 years and I'd be perfectly fine with that. I know a lot of people that can't say that. So I've never worked a job that I couldn't stand more than 5 minutes. I've never been afraid to quit.
That's good. And you know how energizing it is to start something new. So,
Well, and you never know what could be out there for you until you start exploring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, and again, I've never been afraid of taking risks. I mean, remarried at 40, kids at 43,
Yeah.
move 3 times in 3 years. I mean, we're not afraid to take some chances.
It's great because it is interesting how many people are. I think that's one of the things I learned the most when I took that time off. I could not believe how many men and women said they were envious and that they could never do what I had done. I could never do what you've done, and some of it was fear, or taking the leap, the risk, and
Sure.
some of it was financial. I get, but even the financial piece, I would challenge that you probably can do it more than you think you can.
Well, I think the most important thing is having a partner that's on the same page.
That is true.
That helps a lot.
It did. And
Yeah,
I got to tell you,
definitely.
mine was not at first. He's like, can't you just look for something while you have it? And I'm like, no, you need to. And it took a few conversations to convince him that I had pretty much hit rock bottom and needed the break.
It's gone both ways. I mean, she's
Yeah.
had hiccups. I've had hiccups, and we, the other one's always picked up the slack.
Yeah.
And got us through the hard times. So.
Yeah. But picking the right partner is key. I should have given my husband better credit than I did in this relationship. I mean, he moved for me. I moved the baby of the Irish Catholic family from Cleveland to Tampa to take on that sales role. And
well, mine moved from South Florida to Virginia Beach on our 4th date.
Wow.
So she took a big chance.
Wow.
Heather, by the way, Mac is the person who was sitting a few rows in front of us at the LBT concert.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That was a good show. Yeah, I wonder what she had.
Right? I never thought about that.
Another country star died yesterday of COVID. That's very.
Another? I just knew of Joe Diffie, right?
Oh, Joe Diffie, yeah. Joe
yeah,
Diffie
okay.
died.
I didn't know another one before him.
No. Just
okay.
Them Little Big Town being country stars, another.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a big country fan, so I was like, did we lose somebody else? But Joe Diffie was pretty devastating.
I hear John Prine is in critical condition.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I've kind of, unfortunately, I'm ashamed to admit it, but I've kind of been not really serious about this because I don't know anybody that has it. But when you start knowing people that, you start relating to people that you have it, you're like, oh, this is getting real.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of people say that with Joe Diffie.
Yeah.
And I asked my family that question. We had a family Zoom call on Saturday. And since everybody lives in New York, I asked, does anybody know anybody? And everybody did.
Wow.
Yeah, when you if we start seeing those kind of numbers here, everybody is going to have that story. It's a shame.
Yeah, I'm worried about, I've got a lot of friends and family
Yeah,
in Detroit.
and I work in law enforcement at a hospital, and my wife is a nurse at All Children's. In fact, she's held over tonight because she started a research medication on a patient that she couldn't leave. So she still
Wow.
hasn't come home from work, and she should have been home 3 hours ago. Yeah.
Well, I hope it doesn't sound trite. And I mean this so sincerely. We're grateful for people like you and your wife who are doing that, because we wouldn't be getting through this without. So.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
We have our whole decon area in the garage
Yeah.
where we sit down and throw
I've heard
everything
that
in
my
the
nieces
washer.
are nurses, and they say the same thing. They have this whole process of like stripping down and then running in to
Clean your
shower, and
shoes and go
it's
into
like
the
the
Silkwood
demilitarized zone.
shower. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, does anybody else have any questions for me? I know you have some other presentations to get to.
So, Heather, thank you so much again. I really
Thank you,
appreciate your taking the time to do this.
My pleasure. I appreciate being asked, and like I said before, and I'll say it again, I absolutely love helping people with career and anything. So, Sarah, if you want to talk through a negotiation, get in touch with Audrey, and you can get in touch with me.
Okay, it sounds great. Yeah.
All right.
I was
And
going to
you
say,
guys-
I'm kind of in that area where I want to do something different, but I'm kind of scared to take a risk. I'm comfortable in my company. I'm in the 20 years right now.
Oh, wow. You're in that same spot then. Yep.
Yes. So I do want to do training, but in my company, like you were saying, I don't see them hiring me as being like a big role in training. You know, they might let me go for a rotation, but maybe not
Right.
permanent. So I definitely want to look around.
It's so hard to get a company to change perception of you from where you came in.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if you can get some rotations and experience, that then will make you marketable outside.
Okay.
So maybe you take a couple projects to at least get the experience, and then they may see you differently, or then you've got some stuff to put on your resume to look at opportunities elsewhere.
Right.
So.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, you guys. Well, you have a good rest of your evening. Good luck on your presentations.
You too.
Thank
Nice
you.
meeting you.
Thanks, Heather.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, I don't know what happened to Mac. Have you heard anything from him?
I haven't heard from Adam, no.
Okay, so it is 7:12, I think. Sarah, did you post your slides?
Yeah, I posted them.
And Renee, did you post yours?
I don't know if Renee can say anything. I think her audio.
Her mic is off, but she did type something in the chat box a couple of minutes ago. So she obviously can hear. All right, so we'll take a break. I will go I've already uploaded Mac's slides, but I'll see if the others are there. And we'll do your presentations. Why don't we say about 15 minutes? Don't shut off so we don't have to log back on, okay?
Will do. See you in a few.
Okay.